Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing good, Joni. How are you doing?
I am super good. I'm so sorry I didn't get to see you at the office the other day. I was at a distressed house and I was knee deep in a lot of, well, distressed.
Sure. Yeah, no worries at all. No worries. I'll be back. We're going to do those workshops bi-weekly. So I'll be back
Oh, good.
to kind of build on that. And so,
Okay.
yeah, you pop in anytime.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, we are currently live. And so this is what I do every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. I have been doing this for 2 years now, and it's kind of turned into this big thing.
Yeah.
And it's Wine Wednesday, but I have graduated to whiskey. So we are a Whiskey Wednesday. This is my favorite, like my cookie dough Tennessee. It's real good. And I usually drink it from a teacup. So that's where I'm at right now.
Very classic. I like that. And that Old Smoky Distilleries in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Yeah, I think I've been by there.
I don't even know where it's at, but I gotta go. That's for sure.
Yeah, you get whiskey tasting if you go in there. You can have all you want.
Okay, and I can bring my teacup.
Right, exactly.
Awesome. Well, I've had so many people ask me about how I organize myself with my business. And you know that when I started this whole journey, I was real good at front of house and back of house. I had no idea. And finding you guys took my business to another level because I didn't have to worry anymore. I didn't have to worry about the back of house side and how do I manage my money and where does it go and how do I make it so that the tax man, when it comes to April, I don't have this huge vacuum feeling,
Sure.
And I have had so many new agents that are on a similar track that I was, get busy and get in production really quickly and then say, uh-oh. So I would really, really like to prevent people from going through pain and suffering. So that's why I was like, this is perfect to have you come on and just do real talk about what y'all do. And I see we have, so when they ask questions, it'll run across the bottom and I'll kind of manage that. And then my admin is managing also. So it gets kind of fun on Wine Wednesday. I'm just going to prepare you.
I'm ready for it. Yeah. Here's the background. We definitely get you guys in my schedule. I just left my gym over here in Marietta, so I'm in the truck. I'm here. I'm ready to answer any questions you have. And we just did a Run Your Business Like a Business class today down in KW in town. So all that information's right at the tip top of my head.
That is awesome. So basically running your business like a business, you would think it would be intuitive when you get into real estate. But I think what happens is, you have the best intentions, but all of a sudden you start getting into production and, it's kind of like Atlas pushing that boulder up the hill. And then all of a sudden your business is taking on a whole new dimension that you weren't necessarily prepared for as far as your business structure. And so people are sending me questions now, like, when is a good time to start? When should I call you? Is it when you make a certain amount of money? So let's just launch into the basics. When should someone call you guys?
So I think even before that, if I may, Joni, as you're getting into the real estate field, it is, I think, imperative if you can get a jump start on your mindset from the beginning outside of, so here's the typical example like you listed. I'm starting real estate. I just got my license. I'm learning a lot from my brokerage on how to practice real estate and how to get in, convert on homes, build out my client database. And all of those skills are certainly crucial when starting your business. However, it gears you towards this mindset of being a practitioner rather than a business owner. And if you can adopt the identity of a business owner from the very beginning, then your thought process will lead you down a different path than it typically does if you have this practitioner mindset. And the difference between a practice and a business is a practice is dependent on the practitioner being there and physically participating in real estate to make money, where a business has a life of its own. And if you're building your real estate empire, eventually, I believe whether you want to do real estate for the rest of your life until the day that you die, or you want to move on to something else, you should have the choice as to whether or not you want to participate directly in your business or not. And even if you don't want to, your business goes on without you, and you still create passive income for yourself through all this time that you've spent developing your real estate business. So from there, right?
That's mind blowing. I mean, like you said, it is a completely different mindset into, because when people say, I'm a practitioner, they're like, I'm a practitioner, I know what I'm talking about. Well, sure, that's great. But what happens in 3, 5, 7 years when you decide to back off?
Yeah.
Does it, the money stop? Does the pipeline stop? That's fascinating.
And for your example, the answer is typically yes. I could see a study of an aggregate of realtors in the United States. There's about 1.5 million practicing realtors in the United States today. That was as of May 2022. So give or take a few more, a few less. Wow. 95% of them still fall within that practitioner category. And the other 5% have figured out a way to fall into the business owner category. That statistic has not really shifted over the past 70 years that real estate has been booming as a business. Now, real estate came about around late 1800s, early 1900s. I think the National Association of Realtors was founded in 1908, something close to there. However, the real estate agent didn't really start jumping into the professional landscape until right after World War II. When we had all those folks coming home, everybody was looking to buy homes, and then boom, voila, the real estate practice is made, because now everybody needs a fiduciary between them and purchasing a home. They need an expert in doing so.
Right.
Within that time, and this isn't totally on the fault of the realtor, the brokerages were very heavily teaching people how to practice real estate and how to become practitioners within there. As you can imagine, that heavily benefited the brokers. And until pretty recent in that timeline, brokerages like Keller Williams, and even some that are a little more hands-off, like the Compasses and the EXPs, started to realize that actually it benefits us more if we attract entrepreneurs to our brokerage and teach them how to develop their own businesses. Because instead of having this ceiling or lifespan on the typical employee, we now are building businesses that last forever and can outlast whomever has put those together. And so that creates a vehicle for you, specifically the business owner, to fulfill whatever life you want to live. But also it's a win-win for you and the brokerage, because they continue to pull money off of there as well.
Exactly. And that creates a longevity in the brokerage too, because a lot of times the problem that brokerages have is it becomes a revolving door because of fatigue, because of burnout, because the 3%, 3%, 3% until you stop. Unless you're creating passive income with your business or branching out into becoming, being a landlord creator and doing all those entrepreneurial things, it is finite. So I love what you're saying.
Agreed. Mindset would be, I would say, the first step. And there's several ways to go about acquiring that. Mm-hmm. There's lots of great literature out there that I would suggest you just kind of inundate yourself with until you find something that speaks to you. I know the Barnes & Noble that's out off of Barrett Parkway in Kennesaw. If you walk through the door, take a left and go straight back, that is the business section. Mm-hmm. And they have a litany of books to choose from. Some that I would recommend would be Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That's a timeless book. It not only speaks to how you can think and grow rich financially, but also in other aspects of your life. Another one would be Cash Flow Quadrants by Robert Kiyosaki. That book, he just has a really awesome way of conveying different personalities within the professional field. Yes. And not to say that you have to fall within the business owner quadrant. So there's 4 quadrants in that book. It's employee, self-employed, business owner, and investor. However, he gives you enough information to where you can decide where you are now and where you do want to go.
Right.
And then, of course, and these are books that we require new hires at our company to read just to get in the same wavelength as you guys. The first one being The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And
MREA, yes.
right. And the second one being Your One Thing, Gary Keller, both books.
Both books, absolutely.
So I would start there. Another great way that I was able to gain insight on being a successful small business owner is to find local businesses around you, and things like not just successful local businesses, but businesses that you've been to that you enjoyed the experience. You went in and you're like, I'm definitely coming back here. Seek out those business owners and ask them out for a cup of coffee. I mean, we do this all the time, right? As realtors, you guys know everybody. And so this breaking the ice should be fairly easy. And I'll tell you the way that I did it. I found a place that I liked, looked up the owner, found the number, called him and said, hey, I just am reaching out. I was Googling successful business owners in the Marietta area, and your name kept coming up. Can you and I grab some coffee?
Yeah.
And who doesn't love to hear that about
Thank
themselves?
you. I mean, no one's going to say no to that. You've complimented them and you're like, sure, let's go. Yeah.
Exactly. And just hearing their stories, even though it's not the line of business that I was in whatsoever, it's all a similar journey on things that they've figured out, not only from a mindset point, but from an organizational standpoint, which is essentially what we're getting at here. How do you get yourself or your ducks in a row to set yourself up for this potential future growth so that you don't have to fall within the category that a lot of realtors fall in that I get really successful at selling homes. All of a sudden, holy crap, I have a business on my hands as opposed to this hobby that I was kind of working on for a little while. And now I don't know what to do with it. What do I do from a structure standpoint? What should I be paying attention to? If we adopt this business owner mindset from the very beginning, because that's exactly what all of you are. Every single one of you on this live right now, if you're a realtor, you are a business owner. Whether or not you knew that today or before, you are. So go ahead and embrace that. And from there, you're going to start asking the right questions. You're going to seek out the wise counsel that you need to point you in those directions. So once we've adopted mindset, I would say the next step, if you're brand new or if you already have a real estate practice, is to open up an LLC if you haven't already. So you need something separate from you. And that's essentially what you're doing with the LLC. Is it's part of that mindset. It complements that you are now creating an entity separate from you that has its own needs. Because I know that if I'm thinking about our company, Know Your Numbers, there's a litany of things that the company needs on a daily basis to run. There's a litany of things that our clients need. And so all those needs need to be met. For me personally, there's a litany of things that I need to be whole outside of the business. And so there's a finite amount of hours that I can contribute to that business. And so if I get to a point to where my max amount of hours has maxed out on the business side, and I haven't separated those two mentally or even physically with the LLC, then I've already placed a ceiling on what my business is capable of doing.
Absolutely.
Conversely, if I look at that as something separate, I can now say, okay, this is how much I personally can contribute to that. But now the business needs these XYZ things. Instead of thinking that I'm the one that has to do it, I start thinking, how can I leverage my time and leverage this time that the business needs to have either someone else do that, bring on an employee, or hire out services that help me complete that. And that's how you start to make that great divide between you and now this thing that you're nurturing outside of you.
Yes, exactly. I know when I first started thinking about hiring my first person, I was doing the 30, 60, 90. I read the MREA 3 times. I was like, I mean, you get to the point where you just need to do it. Like making that shift into, who cares what the name of your LLC is? Don't get all hung up in that. Just do it, and then once you take that one tiny step, it's so much easier to just keep going because you've already turned the corner.
Absolutely. 1,000%. Right. Yeah. And the LLC just gets the ball rolling for you because it opens up so many other opportunities from an organizational standpoint, probably most importantly, but also from a tax standpoint. You have a lot of other options with your business by at LLC. And I'll get into that in a minute. That's a little long-winded.
Yeah. Well, I like all I can say, and everyone who's on here, we've got lots of questions popping in, knows that everyone knew that I had some serious tax things going on in my previous basically my first year as an agent. It was a nightmare. And then I found you guys and everything. I got my S corp going on. I've got payroll running. I've got my my chief executive officer, whatever salary. And now I'm like,
yeah, good, right?
yes. So Denise is asking, do you help to set up an LLC? Is that something y'all can help with?
So we do help with that. And there's plenty of companies that also help with that too. But what I would say from a return on investment of your time and money, that it is very easy to log on to the Secretary of State's website and create an entity on your own. It'll cost you $100. That's it. Set that up. All it's going to ask you is information that you already know, personal information for you. If you don't have a physical office address that is not your brokerage, then the address that you put on your LLC will be your home address. And from there, it'll ask your information because you're going to be the officer of the LLC. You submit the company name, and then they get back to you and let you know if that name's taken or not. That would be the only hang up you would run into, and you just change the name a little bit and they get back to you. So
absolutely. And my first mistake is I went through one of those companies that said, we'll do this for you. Well, then you're on the hook with them because then you have to pay them every time you want to renew.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Yep. So don't do that. Don't do what I did.
No, and anytime you want to make any changes to it, or you want to make elections like an S corp election, you are. And those companies, while they value their time at whatever that is, it typically comes out to be much more expensive than $100. It's, $500 to $600 on average I've seen.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I would save yourself some money, log on to the Secretary of State website. It takes about 15 minutes. Knock it out.
Yeah. And then once you get that LLC, all you have to do is get an EIN and then you're cooking with gas.
You are cooking with gas. You're right. And that is an important second step because it doesn't come with the LLC whenever you register for it. It's a separate step that you take. That also takes about 15 minutes. You log on to the IRS website, request an EIN for your LLC's name. They'll send it to you. And an EIN, for those that we might be speaking Greek to, is just like a social security number for your business. It's so that they can identify your business by this number as opposed to identifying it by your social security number. And when you do that, you can then fill out a new form W-9. It's the form you submitted to your brokerage so that they could give you a 1099 at the end of the year. And you'll fill it out with your new business name and you'll put your EIN on there instead of your social security number. And then your business will start receiving the commission checks that you get as opposed to yourself.
Yes, exactly. And I think that was one of the more complicated parts is you were doing business so long in your name and you're like, well, I want to keep doing business in my name. I've worked for that. But the mindset shift is this is just how you get paid. You can still be out there as Joni Bates sells or Denise Vargas sells, however you want to do it. It's the behind the stuff that now you become an employee of, for me, it's JB & Co.
Yeah.
So I write my checks and everything from my business. And that was personally hard for me to get my head around. I mean, I even had to call you guys and say, I need to take a distribution. How do I sign the check?
Yeah.
And you guys are like, sign it as a human being. I'm like,
but it's easy to get hung up on those little steps sometimes, right?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Doing this.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important to go through that process so you gain confidence throughout it as well, right? Because all this is new. We talked about the brokerages doing the agents a disservice a little bit and not educating them on how to be business owners. But let's be real. There's a financial literacy crisis in our nation as a whole. We don't learn how to be financially literate in our elementary schools, our middle schools, or our high schools. And unless you take specific classes in like your undergraduate or graduate degree in college, you don't have a background in that. So where are you supposed to get the information? And we are in the information age, right? So everything is at our fingertips. But to your point, Joni, it's very easy to get overwhelmed with all the information that's out there Because if you type up, how do I set up an LLC online, you're going to get 1,000 choices of which way you could go with that. So it does help to have somebody come in and say, hey, this is the best way. This is what we found, right? And this is okay for you to sign that check to yourself for the distribution. Yes, do it.
Yes.
And it makes you feel like, okay, you know what? Actually, I can do this. And if I'm making decisions, I know I'm making the right ones. And if I don't, I at least have somebody to check in with.
Yeah, I've got someone that I was texting y'all probably every other day when my business was really plugging along and I needed to take distributions to bring on employee and do all my different things. And you were there. And now that has tapered off because I learned, I don't need to have that support as much, but every single time someone was always there to answer my questions. And I think that's the part that makes you guys different, is you absolutely get it. You understand the newness about this. And also there's a little bit of fear behind it because we're talking about money. We're talking about having different accounts and being responsible to other people, not just yourself. That's a huge responsibility when you know that you're paying someone to work for you, and you guys make it easy.
Well, I appreciate that, Joni. I do. And you're right, though. You are. I mean, you're a business owner, right? And so you start to accept that responsibility as your company grows. And there's something to be proud of whenever you get to that step. It is a little scary, but in my experience, anytime I'm about to do something that I feel like I'm a little like weary of or a little nervous, I try to lean into that because I know there's going to be some growth on the other side of that action, whatever that is. Yeah. And if I fall flat on my face, that actually gives me more information than if I succeed, So either way, I'm going to win. Yeah.
Fail forward really fast. And you always get up and you always learn something. I love that so much. So I know that we have questions coming in, and I just want to let everyone know that Jake and his entire company are available to you. And we're talking broad strokes here in this podcast. So someone's got a question about, should I do an LLC if I'm going to be joining a team? I'm going to answer that for you. The answer is yes, because it's your money. Even though where it's coming from, you still need to manage your money.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's never too soon. And I think I saw a question come up right before that, is that do you have to have any money in the business to maintain your LLC or keep it open? If the answer is yes and no. Like the LLC doesn't necessarily have to make any income each year to remain open, but there is a fee each year to renew your LLC. It's $50, so half off from what it costs to set it up, and you just pay that fee every year. If you have business or not, your LLC stays open.
Yeah, stays active. And then if you didn't really make any money under your LLC, you have to basically tell the government that you didn't make any money on that EIN, and you're like, bye.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You just put that on that portion of your tax return. It's like, I didn't make any money. And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah,
exactly. They're like, better luck next time.
Right. You're getting after it.
Right. So, in your broad strokes, as far as what are the next steps? I know that when I basically took the MREA to Wells Fargo and I opened it up and I said, do this.
Yeah.
And I created my EIN in the Wells Fargo office. So that tells you how quick it is. I did it on my phone. So go for it.
So, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The next step is to go to a bank with your new EIN and business number and open up a separate business bank and credit card account. I would say definitely a checking account. If you want to tack on a credit card account, you definitely can. The model that we teach in the Run Your Business Like a Business is a 3-account approach on the business end and a 4-account approach on the personal side. So 7 total accounts. However, and bear with me, guys, because I know whenever I tell realtors we got to open up bank accounts, they like start scratching themselves.
No!
I'll get to the why behind that. But I want to hit home the underlying reason for opening up these accounts first. That the IRS comes across as this big, scary entity. And whenever you're opening up your own business, and now you're responsible for reporting the taxes that you owe on your income, as opposed to your employer just taking those out of your check and you not necessarily having to worry about it. It's kind of a scary feeling at first. And I think any way that you can mitigate that feeling of fear or the punitive nature of kind of releasing your money to the IRS, the less you have to think about them, the more you can focus on your business. And opening up those separate business bank accounts allow you to keep all of your business transactions and only business transactions in one place. So everything that you run through your business should go through those accounts, and only things that are for your business should go through those accounts. The reason being is that your biggest defense in an IRS audit situation, we'll say that's the worst case scenario, we're getting audited, but even on our end, we look at that as, okay, cool. They're just asking for more information, because that's all it really is. It's saying, Joni, we saw that you reported this amount of income this year. Will you just tell us how you got to those numbers? Right. Well, if all the information from an expense standpoint is in that bank account, you don't have to look anywhere else. Your bank statement matches a profit and loss report that matches your tax return. You take all three of those sets of documents and you put them on the table with the auditor. And I'll tell you that your chances of getting audited are about 1 in 200. It's like spinning a roulette wheel, right? So we have over 200 clients. So we have to assume every year that at least one of them is going to get audited. And the audit situations that we've been a part of, at least me personally, every single one of them has gone almost exactly the same way. We grab all the information that we have, the P&Ls matching the bank tax return, we place it on the desk, and the auditor says, in their own words, this is the most organized presentation I have ever seen in all of my years of auditing. Thank you very much. They may have a question or two, but it all ends the same way. It's a stamp and get it off my desk. You can have a nice day.
Next.
Right. Because the reality on their end is they have 80 other people that they're trying to get through. And the easier you can make it on them to conduct the audit, the easier they're going to make it on you. So keeping everything in those separate business bank accounts is the very best thing that you can do as a business owner, because that what you're doing is telling the IRS that you are a business person. You're organized. Everything that's on there is a business expense, as opposed to, well, I go to Costco for my open houses, but I also go there to get my groceries sometimes. So I'll just highlight that and put it in my tax return. And then when we get to if we have to go to the audit, I'll be able to explain it. You're discrediting your credibility as a business owner by having to explain that in a situation like that. So why even chance it? It's an easy step to keep everything in there, and you're home free for the most part.
Yeah, and you guys taught me, because I call it back of house. I am really good at selling real estate. I am really good at front of house. I can do that all day long. The back of house, you guys taught me to use a completely separate bank. So my family bank stuff is in one bank and my business is in another. There's no chance for me being like, I'm just going to borrow something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nope. Can't do it.
That's perfect, Joni. And that with that 7 account kind of suggestion that I mentioned in the beginning, that's exactly what we would recommend. Your business bank is a separate bank from your personal bank, so that the transfer is just like that much harder, right? It's not that it's impossible, because you can write a check nowadays and capture a shot on your phone and it goes directly into the account. But the fact that you have to physically write that check and put a reason for that transfer gives you a moment of pause to understand the intentionality behind the money going where it is, as opposed to it being just so quick. I can just send here and send there, right?
And I think that as real estate agents, we have our busy times. And when we get so busy, we think we're going to remember everything. We think, oh yeah, I'm just going to do this real quick and don't worry about it. And I'm going to go back and fix it. And I've got the receipt. It's in the back of your car with all the other sticky stuff. Like, you're not going to remember that thing. So don't do it. Just don't do it.
Yeah. Just make it so you don't have to, right? It's all in the same spot. And that way it's automated, as opposed to being put in some sort of memory box to where your expenses are in the same place. And the transfer that you're speaking of, that is a distribution that you would take if you had the S Corp election as an LLC. I know a lot of this is kind of getting into the Greek again. But that number is an important number to find out as well. And the only way that you're going to be able to get down to that is if you separate your business funds from your personal funds.
Absolutely. Yes. Someone said we got disconnected. I don't see that we got disconnected. So we're just going to keep going. I don't see a glitch. You still there?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're fine there. Well, and honestly, when you talk about having so many accounts, let's go through those accounts and just do kind of a brief description of what those are. And I got to tell you, when I first opened all those accounts, it kind of freaked me out.
Yeah.
But basically, it's like having a bucket at the top with your operations, and then you let it flow through.
Exactly.
To your reserve, your bonus, however you want to do it. So I'll let the expert go ahead.
No, that's a great analogy. It is. So we'd recommend 3 business bank accounts. The first account is, we're going to call it your capital account. That's the account that all of your commissions and all your real estate income comes into to start. So that's our big piggy bank. Mm-hmm. The other 2 accounts are your business reserve and your operating account. The reason the operating account is separate from the capital account is because the operating expenses, we want them to be as fixed as they possibly can be on a month-by-month basis. And by fixed, I mean they're stagnant. They don't change. And if they do, it's because it's intentional, but now we have a new fixed number, right? So, for example, let's say we had a really good month and we have $50,000 that are coming into that capital account. It all comes in. We set a goal for the reserve to be $25,000. However, we didn't want to fund that right away. So $5,000 a month is going to the reserve until it's full. So of the 50, we're going to take $5,000 and send it over to the reserve account. We know that our operating expenses, we'll say that those are $20,000 a month. So we transfer $20,000 to the operating account, and that should go to zero each month because we know exactly how much that's going to be. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't, and if it goes below, then that kind of tips you off a little bit. You're like, wait a minute, something's going on from an expense standpoint. Let me pull out my P&L and let me see if there's any new charges in there, or if somebody's maybe raised the price for their service. And because that does happen, it happens over time, but it at least gives you the moment to say, do I want to continue using this as part of my business? Is it worth it? Is it something that we have to have? Or do I want to look for something else? So it gives you a lot of information just by having that fixed number.
Absolutely.
What's left over in the capital account is what's going to fund your personal accounts. There's 4 accounts in there. Okay. So imagine the 3 accounts on top. There's a big funnel up top where all your real estate income's coming in. And then you have 4 accounts right underneath. These are your personal accounts. There's a big bold line in between the business and personal accounts because they're different banks. It's a hard barrier to get through. The best practices that we've seen work, and this isn't something that you have to do forever, but it's a good way to instill the habit, is to write a check to fund each one of those 4 personal accounts from your capital account separately. Okay. The first personal account that you're going to have is your tax account. Because your taxes are assessed to you personally, no matter how your entity is structured, that's a personal expense. It doesn't count as a business expense. So we're going to separate it from the information that we would need on our profit and loss report. So tax account. The second account is your home operating account. So the mortgage that you pay, your utilities, your groceries, things that you like to do on a monthly basis, like you need to think about all of it because this is going to be your quote unquote officer distribution from the business. This is how much money the business needs to pay you to live your life. The other 2 accounts are, one's a reserve account. That's your emergency fund. You decide what that is going to be and how you would like to fund it. You can do it all up front or you can do a little bit at a time. But once it's full, it's full. We don't send any money to that anymore. The 4th account is it's kind of a multi-purpose account. So I call it a savings account just to keep it simplistic, but you could refer to it as a wealth building account if you want, because this is money for things that we want to do later, whether it's take a lavish vacation or it is invest in homes or investment properties or things like that. And that's going to be a goal number that you set within that account as well. I think the easiest way to fund those is to Set a goal for either 1 year, 2 years, however long you feel like it's going to take you or how long you're comfortable for it to take to fill that. Divide the amount by that number, and then that's how much you're going to send to that account each month. And then by the time you get to that 1 to 2 year timeline, the account's funded. It's there. You've hit your goal. Okay.
And like I said, there's a science behind it. The more that we can think less about that and have it function on its own, the more we can be doing what we're really good at. And going out there and changing people's lives, making relationships, and kind of doing your mission instead of like wallowing in behind going, oh my God, that doesn't serve anybody. It just gives you a migraine.
No, you're absolutely right. And the automation comes in finding out what those numbers are, right? Yes. You can schedule transfers within your business bank account to have it pull on its own monthly, and you can pick the date for that to happen. On your calendar, you'll want to write the date that you're going to send the checks to your personal account. For your taxes, there's something called an EFTPS system. It is an electronic filing and tax payment system. That's it. And if you plug that bank account into that system, they'll automatically draft however much you want them to draft on a monthly, weekly. You can set the frequency and you can change it at any time too, to where your taxes are being remitted for you as well. You don't even have to think about that. So that's what we're after, Joni. You hit the nail on the head again. Automation. So just like any habit, there's a little bit of a barrier of entry. It's going to feel a little hard at first, just because that's the way our brains work. If we're comfortable and we're being fed and we have everything that we need, if we start to make changes to the way that our life operates or the way that we're kind of approaching things, our brain has a little bit of resistance to that at first. It's like, why are we creating new neural pathways when we're doing fine? Why are you doing that?
Yeah. And there's usually fear around that. There's usually some sort of apprehension about something going wrong. Why rock the boat? We good. Like, let's not get crazy now, Joni. I mean,
yes.
You were doing great with just a few credit cards. Come on.
Yeah, and it's a very natural response. Your body almost elicits that response to keep you safe, because that's the whole the whole point of the brain is to keep you safe, right? And so whenever you start making changes within there, it's like, wait a minute, I don't know what we're doing. We're good right now. However, whenever you build that positive feedback loop within your neural pathway, and then also just like from a psychological standpoint, from positive reinforcement from doing it, it becomes really easy and automatic. And then once it's habituated, it's automated. The process is automated, and you'll be writing those checks and transferring those funds while you're closing a deal, because you don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah, and the beautiful part is when you get to the point where you can just go onto your app on your phone, on your bank, and you instantly know your P&L, because your capital account, your operating account, and you see where it's at, you know the data. Yep, okay, so I'm doing good. Or pause, what's happening here? It's instant, as opposed to before when you had highlighters and stickers and God knows what, and you still didn't know what was happening.
Right. You're absolutely right. It gives you a 30,000 foot view of your business in the palm of your hand anytime you want it. Absolutely.
So when something that I did recently is switch to an S Corp. Can you talk about that real quick?
Yes. Okay. So bear with me, guys. So we're going to get into a few.
This is kind of the weeds, but this is important. If you're going to make over $60,000, and everyone on here is going to, this is important.
Yes. And Joni's alluding to $60,000 in profit. So that after revenue minus your expenses, your profit line would be at 60,000. An S corporation, first of all, is not possible unless you have an LLC first. So got to get that box checked first. Mm-hmm. But an S corp election is you telling the IRS that your LLC wants to report your business income as a pass-through entity. What that means is, instead of filing your business return and your personal return all in the same packet of paper, you're saying, I want a separate return for my business and then a separate return for my personal side. On the business return, it's very simple. It's the same equation that we just said. You're going to calculate your real estate revenue. You're going to subtract out all of the business expenses that you incurred that year. And then what's left over is your profit. The profit is called a flow through entity, right? So hang in that word. The profit is then going to then flow over to your personal return. And that's where it will be assessed with all of your other income sources. If you're married, it'll be your spouse's income. If you have rental properties, it'll have your investment income on there. But it just gets thrown into the pot to be taxed altogether. The benefit of an S Corp is that back in the day, I think it was around the 1950s, there was only two ways you could file taxes as a business. It was via a Schedule C tax return, which I'm sure a lot of you file your taxes that way now, or as a C corporation. For both of those companies, there's a tax for being self-employed on your profits. That's a fixed amount. They bump the number up every year, but it's up to about $170,000 in profit now. The fixed amount is 15.3%. That's assessed to your total profits, no matter what, if you file as a Schedule C. If you file as a C corporation, the problem was that C corporations issue dividends to their shareholders. And Coca-Cola doesn't have a problem with that because they have employees and shareholders that are separate from Arthur Blank, or excuse me, not Arthur Blank, but the owner of Coca-Cola. I used to work at the Georgia Aquarium, so intimately familiar with Mr. Blank and all those guys. So get them all kind of mixed up. But anyways, they don't care that that is taxed on the corporate side and then also taxed to the individual that it's given to. But if those two things are one and the same, i.e. a realtor, you're the business owner and the person getting paid, we run into a problem of double taxation. So yeah, it's taxed at the business level and the personal level. So the IRS said, okay, you know what? We're going to throw entrepreneurs a bone and we're going to create what's called an S corporation, and it's going to behave as a pass-through entity. And what we're going to require of people who make this election is that they set up a salary for the work that they do within the business. The parameters that we're going to put around that salary is that they are within the median of, in this case, realtors nationwide. So it's right in the means of what realtors are taking as a salary. But the other component is that it is reasonable next to the profit that you're making. So those two working together is that, let's say that the average salary for realtors is $30,000, which that's right around where it is. However, your business is making $200,000 in profit. If you reported a $30,000 salary, the IRS is going to be like, wait a minute. So you're telling us that an employee that generates $200,000 in profit is only making $30,000 in their salary. Nah, we need to bump that up a little bit. Okay. So our advice would be to take a conservative approach with that. So you bump it up a little bit. Well, let's say we take it up to $60,000 at that point, right? Mm-hmm. Where the tax savings comes into play is that if that same situation plays out with a Schedule C filer, and we'll bring the numbers down to make the example a little more simple. Let's say they made $100,000 in profit in 2022. They're going to pay the federal income tax on the $100,000. They'll pay the state income tax on the $100,000 as well. And then they'll also pay $15,300 in self-employment tax. So that's at 15.3%. If that same individual earlier in the year made an election to file as an S Corp, they now have the same $100,000 in profit. However, they now have an additional expense they can subtract from that profit, and that's going to be their salary. Let's say that they were conservative and took a $30,000 salary. Okay. I'm now subtracting $30,000 from the $100,000 profit line that I have. I'm reporting $70,000 on my personal return as opposed to $100,000. This is a little bit of a tax savings there, even though you're paying tax on the wages. However, that 15.3% is only going to apply to the $30,000 that I took as a salary. That's the savings comes in.
That's the money. I mean, that right there can save you. Well,
yeah, it would save you close to $9,000 in self-employment tax just in that example alone.
Yes.
And that is definitely the way to go. As Joni mentioned, once you start approaching that $60,000 in profit line, that's kind of the commonly accepted amount. If you're flirting with that and you're close, it's not a hard line at all. we would just like to see that your business is making enough money to pay you a salary and also have profit left over to where that 15.3% savings is going to make sense, right? Because if we're making 30,000 in profit and we have to take a $30,000 salary, there's no benefit there at that point, and you're just paying extra for the payroll software.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing is all this is done. It's all automated. And they walk you through it. Like I did Patriot Payroll and I just hung out with you guys, signed up for it, boop, done. Again, less thinking. I'm more me doing what I'm really good at instead of worrying about all this stuff. And if you guys are worried about how much these guys cost, don't, because you're never going to be able to save and figure out what they're doing. It's kind of like when someone says to us that they know what they're doing and they're going to go do a FSBO, and we're like, good luck with that. And then they call you in a few months. Exact same thing. Just saying.
Thank you for that endorsement, Joni. You know, we always say that we think it's smart to have someone handle the minutia of putting this information together, whether it's understanding how to put your business structural standpoint, putting together P&Ls, and getting that information into a document that is legible. However, what you cannot leverage is understanding those documents, right? So understanding the why behind, why am I making this S Corp election? Why am I setting up an LLC? So we try to take a very proactive approach in education, and that's essentially what our business is modeled around. Ask ourselves the same questions every day. How can we better educate real estate agents? How can we do that on a broader scale? How do we help impact this financial literacy epidemic that we have as a nation? And this is the way we go about doing it. I believe very strongly that if you get those things set up, that you're going to be like ahead of about 90% of your peers within the field. You get your LLC set up, you get your bank account set up, and you get somebody putting together profit and loss reports for you and helping you figure out your budget. There's a quick point in there. If you have a budget and you don't have a P&L, the budget's useless. And if you have a P&L and you don't have a budget, the P&L is useless.
Amen.
So work together. You need both to be able to get an accurate depiction of your business. And once you have those, you can think of that as like your control center for your business. It's where you're going to play red light, green light with your expenses. And it's where you're going to push growth because you can see what that's doing from a revenue standpoint. It's where you're going to pull back. It's how you're going to decide to hire new employees. This is the map that's going to guide you through your business plan in whatever direction that's going to go. So if you don't have that already, and even if you aren't at the $60,000 level, I would absolutely recommend getting somebody to put that together for you. I don't want to overcomplicate it and say that it's not possible for you to go on to QuickBooks, sign up for an account, and link up your bank and then categorize those transactions yourself. I would recommend using the MREA chart of accounts for that. That's what we use. However, I really feel strongly that your time can be used better by going out and prospecting and generating leads, as opposed to putting that together and trying to understand it at the same time.
Absolutely. Again, do what you're good at. And if you happen to be really, really good at spreadsheets and doing all those things, and that's your bliss, well then hell, do it. Go for it. Kick it out. Whatever. But I guarantee you, most of us are very similar, and this can be difficult. And there is no reason to have sleepless nights when it comes to this, because money is difficult. And when you have someone to help explain money and explain how to use it, and particularly look at your P&L report, and it literally will tell you, this is working for me, this isn't. You don't have to have a wild hair and be like, maybe I'll do this. No. You just look at your P&L. It tells you if you could add some here, subtract from there. It turns into your little kind of your business Bible.
Absolutely. And to your point, Joni, not only does it help you figure out where you can add things and take things away, it tells you how the things you already have in your business are performing. Your lead generation efforts aren't spinning in a direction that really isn't generating any profit. Because I will say, and it not to be, tragic or anything, but there's a lot of really awesome business owners out there who really hustle and do a lot of hard work, but they're doing it from the wrong things. And they're just spinning their wheels and they end up burning out. And that's why you see that statistic for small businesses that the vast majority of them fail within the first 2 to 5 years. You want to be able to have that information in front of you so that when you are getting after it, you're getting after it in the right direction and on the right.
Absolutely. And this has been incredibly, I mean, we need to have you back. We're going to have a 2.0. We need to, I know you got to go because you're in the car, come from the gym. I appreciate you so much, Jake. And y'all know the love I have. Used to be Tax and House. Now it's Know Your Numbers. I sing their praises. So, Jake, how can people get a hold of you?
So we're most of the time available to readily answer the phone. If not, we will call you back within the day. So the phone number is 404-537-3000.
Sorry, Harlow gets a little anxious when he's not close enough to his mama.
No problem. Yeah. Again, that number is 404-537-3000. Or you can email us at reports@taxandhouse.com. We're still working on getting those emails changed over to Know Your Numbers. That's a fairly new rebranding that we put in last year.
Yes, and it's either one works because when it has to do with taxes and numbers, I don't want to touch it. So boom.
Fair enough.
Boom. Thank you, and everyone on here is giving you claps and applause and hearts. So I appreciate your time so much.
Oh no, thanks for having me, Joni. It was a pleasure. Definitely, let's do it again soon.
I love it. Take care, guys. All right, see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.